educating. You know, the education continues.
It never stops, Lauren.
Yeah. How about you? What have you been up to this week?
Well, it feels like the week it just started, but also it feels like it's been 12 days of a week already. So
Oh, really? Why?
it's just, it never slows down. You know, I'm in the alumni office now, so even though classes are over, we support the alumni and their lives never stop, right? Hopefully, even though the industry is kind of stopped right now. Have you noticed that here in LA,
Yeah,
at
I
least?
mean, everywhere. Yeah,
Everywhere? Is it bad in New York?
yeah.
Yeah. What's the word on the street?
Like about
Like,
this
is
industry,
it
or yeah.
well, is the talk, like, I keep hearing, like, oh, there's it's because of a possible IATSE strike or Teamster strike. But then there's also all the streamers and studios are making less stuff. Is it a combination?
I mean, I guess that's what I hear through the grapevine. I don't know. I feel like I have the same kind of like limited understanding that most other people below the line do.
Yeah.
Maybe even less than the average below the line person. I don't know. I feel like I find the whole thing very confounding.
Just the term below the line, I feel, is insulting.
Why? It's factual.
No, well, it's factual because we've created this vocabulary that says some people are above the line and some people it's you're creating this class system. Like, what makes those people above the line, just because we call them that. But it puts this weight and importance on them, right?
Maybe. I mean, I thought it kind of just came from like whether your title is like literally above or below like a certain line on the budget, right?
No, it is that is where it comes from. But I'd say, like, maybe for people who don't know where it comes from, you
Mm.
hear that and you go, oh, they're better than the other people because they're above a line.
Yeah, yeah, you think of it like hierarchically.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe I'm putting too much into it. Maybe I'm
I don't think you are necessarily. I do a lot of people think of it that way, I believe, but I don't know.
so you're living in the world of independent film mainly, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I am 600. I've worked a little bit in television, a little bit in like, you know, commercials and stuff, but I would say my body of work is probably most like the strongest signature on stuff in it is the narrative features, the indie features.
Right. And that's
Yeah.
like what you're focusing on. Focusing. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. It would be, I mean, listen, it would be great to get more commercial work. Especially because, you know, the relationship between work and money in this industry is like inverse. There's not even no correlation. It's inverse. I say this to people all the time that like, you know, the harder I work, the less money I make, and the reverse is true. So it would be great to get a little bit more of that balance. But yeah.
Well, wait. Let's unpack that. What do you mean by that?
Commercials are easier, shorter. You have more support, more resources. I'm never breaking my back on the stuff where I'm making a full rate the way that I'm like breaking my back and like putting all the blood, sweat, and tears and donating my gear to an extent and you know, just pulling out all the stops for a narrative feature.
Right. Right. Because you don't have the resources, because it's,
Yeah,
again, because you're
right.
in
So
that
it
indie
comes
world.
from
Yeah.
you. Exactly.
Yeah. So what I was going to ask was, like, because you're for features, right? You're in that indie world.
Hmm.
Is that affected by this slowdown in production, or is that kind of not, because it's not studio dependent and streamer dependent?
I mean, I think it is in the sense that like um I just hear this anecdotally from like that cinematographers who would be shooting majors right now are shooting tiers, like tier one
Mm,
and two. And then the people who would be shooting tiers are now shooting teeny tiny independent features. And the people who shoot teeny tiny independent features, it's like, you know, what is there left? It's not like there's nothing left. I mean, certainly, I think the way that a lot of these movies get made is on the basis of like personal relationships, especially between director and department heads. So it's not like those go away necessarily, but yeah, I just think there's less work to go around, and yeah, I can see the food chain kind of like cycling in that way.
Yeah. It's more for the jobs you're going out for that you don't have the relationships with, right? Like a $2 million movie, I assume would be like a step up for you, but that's a step down for these other DPs that are not working, right? So now you're competing against more experienced people.
Yeah, precisely. And I think like at this point it would be like yeah, small step up, lateral step, but that's always been the case. I mean, you know, someone like Helena Luvart, I'm butchering her name, but who shot Alice Rothwaller's latest movie.
Wow.
She shot Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always in 2017 or 18, I believe, here in New York City. And she's like a total legend of a cinematographer. And that film was $2 million. You know, this kind of thing precedes the strike. So the reality is that, you know, people fresh out of film school or less than 10 years out of film school, we've always been in competition with pretty impressive and experienced people for films of, you know, that kind of scale when they're really good. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're really good. You're really
oh
good,
my
Lauren.
God, Schwartzy, thanks, making my day.
Wait, first I got to get this out of the way. We're gonna do a happy hour at Tribeca during
I
Tribeca.
know I'm out of town.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, one a little bit of commercial work has come up. Careful what you wish for, right? Now I'm missing the alumni
No,
reunion.
you can do that anytime. Go take the work, please. Take the work.
Yeah.
Cuban background.
Cuban-American. I was born in the States.
One of your parents was born in Cuba. Both of
Los
them.
dos.
Close.
I said los dos.
Oh, los dos. Oh, wow. Okay, great. So you're full on Cuban.
Yes.
Wait, how
American.
did they get here?
Um, my my parents came like basically at the very beginning of the Communist Revolution, slash
Hmm.
like right before it. Each of their families independently of each other. They did not know each other, even though they both came from Havana. But yeah, I mean, my brother and I are first gen kind of on a technicality. Really, culturally, we're more like second gen because my parents were raised in the United States. They left Cuba when they were each like, you know, babies. So yeah, that's my
Oh,
background.
gotcha. Gotcha. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Wait, where are you from, Schwartzy?
I'm from exotic Los Angeles.
You're a
I'm an
you.
LA native. I was born in Burbank. Yeah,
Whoa, at St. Joseph's by any chance?
I was. How'd you know that?
Odd, because because I
That's
filmed my
crazy.
friend's
No one knows the name of that hospital.
no, I know because I filmed a friend's birth there on she gave me a Super 8 camera and wanted me to shoot it. And I
Your
went to
friend was giving birth. You
my
weren't
friend
friends with the baby already. Okay.
correct. I mean I could be now that I mean that baby's talking now, but yeah, so I went to St. Joseph's to do that and I didn't know if there were other Burbank hospitals.
Wait, what? They let you in there with a camera and you filmed a live birth.
I filmed like a lot of the process leading up to it and I was in the room for it, but they wouldn't she thought maybe they would let me actually film like the actual birth and they didn't let me, you know, point the camera as the baby was emerging from her body, unfortunately. That would have been amazing.
And that's what your friend wanted, but they wouldn't allow it.
I don't think she was in so much pain actually by the time she got close enough to the birth. I don't think she was even thinking about that. But yeah.
Has anyone looked at that footage after? Like, is that something you actually want to watch after?
I would want to, but she still hadn't gotten it developed even like a year or two after the baby was born, and I was just like, oh, tell me when you get it developed, and I think it might still be in her fridge somewhere in Van Nuys, but I'll have to ask her about that. Yeah,
I love, yeah, because maybe in this episode we can cut to that footage to show some of your work.
yeah, my finest work.
I love that you shot on film, keeping film alive in the weirdest ways possible.
It was her idea. I can't possibly take credit, but yeah.
All right, so let's go back because I'm curious. I like hearing, like what was the, the thing that got you to go to film school, but what was the when did it hit? Like when did it kick in that you're like, that's what I want to do with my life? Some form of making, images.
Um, Probably when I was a teenager. I talked about this a little bit with the people at the ICFC, but I did this workshop when I was 16 at NYU, and they have like their college students at Tisch teach high schoolers how to make a film for the first time, and it's all very fun, and you shoot on DVX 100, and it's nothing like real production in terms of workflow or anything, but yeah, it just really made me super enthralled with the team building aspect of filmmaking, and the act
Mm.
of working as a team to make something together I thought was so fun. Or beyond fun, I felt really like ignited by it. And that in combination with um the a very cursory kind of introduction to cinema. They show you like La Jetée for the first time, these two things combined were like an incredibly powerful uh force. And I don't know if I would have ended up going to film school twice after that, had I not, I don't know, had I not had that experience. So yeah.
Oh, you're a twofer.
Mhm.
You, where did you go first?
Northwestern University for undergrad.
Okay.
That was a little more theory focused though. It's not quite, I think, it's not quite like the journey that a lot of people take from Columbia College, for example, to AFI.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And what point did you realize cinematography? Because when you come to AFI, that's when you've made a very, you know, concrete decision. That's what I want to study or do.
Yeah. I mean, I think I ended up learning about the different departments in filmmaking probably at this high school program. At that point, I think I realized that the director was one step too removed from what I wanted to be doing, and I kind of just intrinsically felt like I wanted to be closer to the camera. So once I learned that the director was not, that there was another person in between the director and the camera, I thought I want to be that person, and I want to, spend my life supporting directors.
It's interesting though, like that you said that it was removed. The director was removed. So you feel that cinematographer is the closest person to capturing the image, to creating the image.
Hopefully. One can only hope. I mean, maybe not physically in the sense that, depending on the scale of the project you're on, you have an operator who's the one physically touching the camera. The DP may not be touching it. Um,
But no, like, in the bigger sense, in the conceptual sense.
in the conceptual sense, yes. But a lot of people, but you can, and a lot of people do make the argument that, um, if you're shooting something handheld, that the really kind of finite micro movements in a handheld shot are very much part of what makes the image.
Mm.
A sense of a tactile relationship with the camera is really, um what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, it's just hugely like important to developing the image as a whole.
Is that when you feel like the most personally you're expressing who you are when you're handheld shooting something?
Um, I often I often do feel that way. Not always. It's not like I've felt like less connected to an image that's been on a tripod if that image is really powerful in other ways, um but there's something about handheld operating and its particular sort of challenges and opportunities um that makes me feel really connected when I'm like in the moment. I do think there's something to be said, sure, for like the mind-body connection and like the act of moving with the camera and being on your feet and doing that dance. That's very special. Um, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. I mean, it's your answer to that question. Yeah. I'm curious about like that whole handheld thing. But I guess it's different directors that you work with are gonna direct that differently, obviously. What do you respond to more? let's say, when you're doing handheld? Is it someone who's just like, just feel it out and find it in the moment? Or do you like to be directed when you're going handheld?
Um, I think it totally depends on whether you're shooting something documentary or fictional.
Yeah.
Documentary, I love that purely instinct driven thing when you just have to kind of like follow somebody and improvise. For fictional scenes, if not like if I'm not like more actively being directed, at the very least, it's nice to like see blocking and be really engaged in like kind of planning out at least like the major points of your move. And then after that, yes, then I think there's always a little bit of like improvisation um within that. Because the actor's never going to hit, well, some do, but a lot, most actors don't hit exactly the same mark at exactly the same time every single take, or some
Mhm.
takes they might change up their physicality a little bit, they might change up their eye line just a little bit. And I find that especially this act of like shifting and doing like counter moves kind of with an actor's eye line, or especially the direction that they're pointing their shoulders in, and getting a particular view of like the view from like 3/4 behind, like neck, ears, and a whisper of the eye, to something that's almost frontal, like the act of doing that wraparound, if that's what the move calls for. Those are like a little bit different every take, and I there's something super like electrifying about that to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It keeps you in the moment. It gets probably exciting that it's not the same every time. It's alive.
Yeah, yeah. And after doing so much handheld for documentary work after AFI, or like political videos, or like branded doc work, if not like purely doc, like just drilling that kind of handheld work over and over again, I found to be really useful for like bringing that sense of like uh aliveness, I guess, when
Yeah.
when I went handheld in narrative stuff.
Yeah. Well, two things. I saw a creature behind you.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's hold on.
Who is that?
My cat.
Oh, what's the cat's name?
This one's Trixie
Trixie. Oh, this one. How many do you have?
too.
Two.
Yeah.
Wow. You're a mom. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Um, it's it's not an easy life to be a working mom, but
But cats are easier than dogs. I do know that.
yeah, yeah. It's nice to not have to worry about them when I'm on set. Oh, that's for sure.
So then, practical question, and I say this as a man who is barely 5'7", let's say 5'6", but I know you. I know that you're short. You're petite.
Yeah,
Um, as is that ever like a practical issue when you're doing handheld?
it can be.
Yeah.
Um, but usually going into something, if handheld is going to be like a major form of support, that's something that the director and I have already talked about. Or like in the case of this feature that not that I just shot. I shot it in the fall of 2022, but that just premiered at South by Southwest this spring. Um I showed the director lens tests that I had done with the actors, and we were shooting Super 16 for principal photography, but I just took my FS7 for the sake of showing the director a few different things. What handheld movement looked like on different forms of terrain, like when we were tech scouting, because a lot of it was in, places varying from the Badlands to forested area outside of Rapid City, things where like the quality of handheld can be very different depending on what the landscape is like, right? That I knew that I would want to do like certain focal length tests on the actors. So yeah, I got to at least show her, even if it was with a digital camera, some rough sense of like what the relationship between the more or less fixed lens height and the actor and the focal length would look like at multiple different distances. And I could always go lower, but uh, unless we do the Trail of Apple Boxes thing. Yeah. So that's a good question. It is a consideration, and the way that I've been able to tackle it is like by doing something like that, taking a couple hours with the actors in pre-production to show what that looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you are someone that likes to operate.
I love operating. I mean, I love operating handheld.
Yeah.
I would say, like, I think if given the choice on something, anything that's not single camera, once or twice I've been in this situation where, like, for two cameras, I have to operate A and somebody has to operate B, and I don't think that's the best way to work. So yeah, if it's single camera, sure, but
Yeah. But it goes back to, like, why you wanted this role of cinematographer is like you wanted to be there in it. So I love that you love to operate. That's great.
yeah, and I really love it. I think for the same reason that I love still photography, especially portraiture, right? This sense of like a physical a conversation between the subject and the operator is very exciting to me. And that's not the same thing as cinematography. It can be part of it, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's just one part of the whole thing for me.
Talk about that relationship, because when you are operating and you're shooting, you know, intimate dramas, things like that, and you are, like you said, you want to be the closest person, to it. You're the closest person to the actors, right? So what do you do to create trust with the actors, to connect with actors, but also respect that director's role?
Usually I'll ask the director in advance if there's like a certain line of communication that shouldn't be crossed, because sometimes it can be confusing for not only an actor, anybody on a crew, right? When you or in post, a colorist, for example. Like when anybody receives conflicting information from a director and a DP, it makes their job more difficult. So usually I ask the director, um, are you comfortable with me asking actors to like physically shift a little bit in one direction or another? I mean, that's like the kind of most extreme version of it if a director says no to that. Usually they wouldn't. And that's what operators do all the time anyway, right? They're shifting marks. But I'll ask that just to kind of like get a very quick sense of how sensitive the director is to things. And then, sometimes directors want to be the person who talks to them about like changing an eye line. Um, yeah, well, I'll kind of like go from there. Are you okay with asking me, or are you okay with me asking them to change an eye line? Are you okay with me asking them, um, I don't know, to shift up their physicality a little bit, because then something like that might encroach more on conversations that the director and the actor have had in pre-production. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, usually I try to address that before. Yeah.
And do you do anything special though to have a relationship with the actor? You do a take, director says cut. Do you say anything to the actor after, or is it always like that's not your place? That's for the director.
I think for the most part, it's not my place. Uh, when I've shot comedy, sometimes the director, um, at the beginning of the whole shoot will make a note to the crew that like it's okay to laugh. And in fact, like these actors want to hear that kind of feedback. Like when, at the end of the take, when somebody calls cut, it's good for the actor to like hear the crew laughing, because then that's positive reinforcement, and it's nice for them to know that something landed. So I think in that sense, like I don't go out of my way to strike up a conversation or anything about the performance, but situation depending, um I'll kind of just like let whatever emotion show on my face in response to what's just happened during the take. Sure.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Are you ever so in it that you're like emotionally moved by, like, every little tear coming down Lauren's cheek?
It's happened before. Yeah,
Really?
totally. Yeah.
Wow. Very cool.
Yeah.
What directors that, when they say cut and then they just start talking to you right after, um, do you ever pull them aside and be like, hey, talk to the actors first? I never understand that. Like the directors that just leave the actors hanging after a take and just start talking to the crew.
No, I feel like that's, if that's their prerogative to have whatever order of operations they need to have to work. I mean,
No,
maybe
Lauren, you need to change it.
I need to change it. Maybe get some directors on this podcast, see how they feel about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You wait, why did you move to New York?
because I felt like it.
That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
Because your
Well,
your career was you were doing well here. And then I remember one day you're like, I'm going to New York and I'm never coming back. F you.
I hope that's not how it came off.
No.
And then I did come back because I needed to work. But no, I also moved here because I had the opportunity to finish up a season of a television show that yeah, that just needed a local New Yorker, and I was really like trying to make the move happen any way I could. So like those things aligned nicely. Um, so part of it was the opportunity to do that job. And
Yeah.
then the other part of it was yeah, just feeling like it was a better fit for things that I wanted out of life.
And how has it been?
It's amazing. I
Yeah.
really love it. I've enjoyed getting to know people in the independent film scene here, getting to meet other people who are really like invested in the repertory programming that happens all around the city. It's something that I'm really passionate about here.
Yeah.
Um, and I've said this before too. It's not like LA doesn't have really wonderful repertory programming, um, especially like at AFI with somebody like Barry at the school. It's like,
Yeah.
you see things at AFI that you really can't see in most other places in the country. But yeah, just I think like the volume of it in New York and the fact that you can walk to 4 different movie theaters in one day that all kind of have like a little bit of a different slate going on is very exciting. And when I'm not shooting, I find that like that's a really important thing to me. Just
That's
like that.
great. Actually, I haven't heard that. That's a very specific reason. So that's very cool. So next time I'm in New York, I'm going to hit you up for recommendations of where to go.
You should, yeah. Well, you're gonna be right across the street from the Roxy for the alumni thing, no?
Oh, I don't know if I'll be there. I don't know if I'm going to go out this year, but is that if that's oh yeah, you're right. I remember seeing that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Roxy's awesome.
Yeah. But recently in LA, we had the Vista reopen. Tarantino owns it now. And Vidiot's, which is super cool and has been showing awesome stuff. And then the Los Feliz 3, that little crappy theater you probably remember, is now a Cinematheque theater, or one of the theaters in there is a Cinematheque. So they show a lot of repertory stuff. So yeah,
Yeah, all of
I
that.
feel lucky to live in the city like for that. And New York, it's cool to hear that that's the same.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
Brain Dead too in LA, formerly Cinefamily, right? I
right.
mean, Cinematech has been around for a while, no? Like I used to be a member before I moved.
No, it has. It's just there was the Arrow on the west side in Santa Monica, and then there was the Egyptian here closer to us. And then the Egyptian closed down for a long time because Netflix was refurbishing it. And while it took a while, but while it was still being refurbished, then they moved into the Los Feliz 3, into one of those theaters. But now the Egyptians open also, which is every so often they'll show something, different or older. But it is like it's Netflix's theater to show to have their premieres. It's like it's the Paris Theater in New York
Just
is
gonna
the
say,
same.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah, Hitman is all over the Paris Theater now.
Which I hear is good. So
It's a lot of
not
fun.
oh, you saw it?
Yeah, I actually got to see it on standby at New York Film Festival in like October last year.
Yeah.
And energy was high and like Richard Linklater was there, so like that was like the perfect context to see it in.
It's always the best way to see a movie, right? Yeah. Okay, wait. I got to get back to this is after film school, but I have to know what happens at film school. So you go to Northwestern, you're doing theory classes, which also I believe that's where Barry went and got his PhD. I believe that's true.
Ooh, is it Northwestern or NYU? No, he went to NYU,
Did he go to
right?
NYU? Oh, you could be right, but he is from Chicago. He's from Chicago.
Yes, he's
Yeah.
from Chicago. I'm pretty sure it's NYU though, because last time I was in LA, I crashed his class and got to talk to him in his office a little bit.
Mm.
And I remember him telling me about like his time in New York and that he had gone to the original anthology archive, and I was just like geeking out over it.
Oh,
So
that's so cool.
you.
Okay, well then your info is more fresh. I confused Chicago with Northwestern.
Um,
Okay, but at what point are you like, okay, I'm going to take this real seriously. I'm doubling down, and I'm going to get an MFA in cinematography from the legendary AFI.
uh, I had started shooting a little bit and getting into production a little bit at Northwestern, especially with a lot of extracurricular stuff on the weekends. So that really started me on the path down production. And when I moved to LA, um, I responded to a Craigslist ad that was like requesting help on a cycle film. So that was my introduction to AFI. And I started doing a lot of helping out on those sets because I set like a goal for myself to learn more about G&E. I really didn't come out of college with like a good understanding of how the electric department or the grip department worked, and I wanted to learn more about lighting. So I just kept doing that for a long time, or it felt like a long time. I think in the grand scheme of things, it was only about a year's worth of doing that on and off in between other jobs. But I did it pretty consistently. And you know how cycle films are, right? Like any production, they go for, I know they're shorter now, or I've heard they're shorter now, but they
They
would do
are. Yeah.
12-hour days when I was doing them.
Hmm.
Right. So it's like many hours in quick succession. And that really led to me kind of getting to know people in the AFI community pretty well. And I just saw that the school had extended the application deadline. And it's not like me volunteering really led to connections or relationships with any people running the cinematography department, but I got a sense of what the culture was like and who the students were. And so I just decided that, like, if they were going to keep pushing the deadline for admissions, like I might as well strike while the iron is hot and see what happens. And um yeah, I had the great good fortune of getting in much earlier in my career than I ever thought I would even apply. But it was mostly because I had built up those social relationships so quickly, and so yeah, just kind of serendipitously.
And you had a reel?
I had a reel from like a couple of shorts and music videos that I shot, and I think maybe I submitted photographs. Like I can't even remember.
Mm.
I had like the world's crappiest reel. I don't know what Stephen Lighthill was thinking, but or actually I do a little bit. I have a little more insight now, right? They're not really judging so much like the actual the or the technical expertise demonstrated in a reel so much as they are thinking about like a student's potential, I
Yeah.
assume,
Yeah.
right? In hindsight, that's kind of the impression that I get.
Yeah. And then it's meeting you and seeing if you're the right fit for it. And do you remember any when you were working on those cycles? Do you remember any of the cinematographers that you worked with that were like inspiring, or that you've stayed connected with, that mentored you through this process?
Hmm. That mentored me. I don't know if mentor is the right word.
Well, that
Um,
like kind of told you about AFI and encouraged you to apply, or was that all on your own?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I I can remember off the top of my head. I mean, Rasa Parton was the first AFI DP that I met because he's the person who posted the Craigslist ad looking for
Ah,
G&E on his cycle film. So
yeah.
I met Rasa first, and then a bunch of people who worked on his shoot. I mean, including Britton Foster, who's a wonderful person and a wonderful cinematographer. Uh,
Hmm.
A2, Kristen Krell.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. You're talking about like three of the top, like, and they're all
yeah.
working DPs right now, shooting a bunch of features. They're so cool.
Yeah. And then I worked on Eli Aronson's thesis, and he became a good friend and like I wouldn't say
Yeah.
like a mentor, but yeah, somebody I can hit up for advice for sure.
Yeah.
Um yeah, I got friendly also like very quickly with like um Joshua Zucker Pluta is somebody I still keep in touch with and I look up to very much and has just helped me so much as an artist and as a person. Um,
Oh, he's in New York, right?
he was
Ah,
and now he and his family have moved back to LA since. But yeah, he was also one of the people who I really connected with when I was in New York, because there's a lot more AFI graduates in LA for obvious reasons. Um, just the proximity to the school and everything. So yeah,
hmm.
Stas Bondarenko, Kalila Robinson, like all those people have been so amazing. Fabian Housepian. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good network that you just listed off.
Yeah,
Good people.
great people.
Okay, so you get to AFI. Put us in that room, or what's going through your head on that thing that we call Real Day, where everyone sits in a theater together on the big screen. They watch each other's work that they did before AFI with your colleagues who you don't even know yet because it's day two. And for most of the people in that room, they've never seen their work projected on a big screen or to an audience. And now you're showing these people that you're about to like make movies with. You know, it's very vulnerable. What was your reaction to that?
Um, it conjured feelings of those like sorority rush. It's so strange. And you know you're being judged and you're judging others, and it can be nerve-wracking. It is nerve-wracking. I assume it's
Yeah.
still nerve-wracking. You guys still do this ritual, right? This like it's a hazing
Sadly, no, they don't do it.
because it's really
No, COVID killed it. So they started putting like people's reels online, and it's like if you want to look at them, and it's not the same because as rough as it was, and it was like yeah, it could be you're judging each other and you're competing with each other or whatever in your heads at least.
yeah.
By the end of that day, you all bonded. You all went through it. You all knew a little bit about each other because you would introduce yourself and your reel, and it was painful and it was long, but you all went through that thing together, and I just felt like I don't know. Taking that away has taken away that kind of quick bonding that would happen.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Well, yeah, you should bring it back. I think those kinds of hazing rituals are actually really kind of
Let's not
productive.
use those terms, okay?
Sorry. And you know what? Also, I never thought of it this way before, but it kind of gets you used to the the idea that your work is meant to be seen on a big screen. I don't think I'd
Yeah.
ever seen my work projected on a screen that big. And granted, it was just like like a Vimeo and H.264 file or something, not the full blown DCP, not gone through like the full DI. Um, but still, it was a real wake up call. It's like your work is going to be on a big screen and people are going to scrutinize it. Get used to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like the rest of your career, but also like definitely what was going to happen the next 2 years in graduate school, right?
Yeah, and Real Day actually, I think of fondly for like for another major reason, which is that it got me and a director named Dorian Talker to connect at AFI. And then Dorian and I ended up doing Cycle 1 together, and we just like got off the phone. I got off of like a 2-hour phone conversation with him like over the weekend. Like to this day, we still talk all the time, close collaborator, like lifelong friend. And I remember, I think the first time we talked is because of like some sort of like mutual recognition of each other's work on Real Day. And Dorian really changed who I am as a filmmaker. So that was another really wonderful outcome of
From
that.
that cycle one.
Not just from Cycle 1, but just from like an ongoing friendship, ongoing collaboration. Um, I think like during my time at AFI, people like Barry and people like Dorian really opened my eyes to what was possible in cinema and to a spectrum of cinema, especially world cinema, outside of things that I was more familiar with coming into AFI.
Mm.
So yeah, Real Day is exciting because you never know who you're gonna meet who will affect the rest of your career. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
and
the other
you're
part is you're making those connections and getting to know each other through your work, which
yeah,
was great, especially for like, starting to see, who who your people were and who you were going to team with, and you know, that evolved probably through those 2 years, but it was a good starting place. I love that relationship that you have with Dorian. That's very cool.
Yeah, super exciting. There's a few people in my year for sure who I also have that kind of like, that kind of like lasting social relationship with too. Like I think of film school not just as, a place where I started to develop technical or technical expertise or um an artistic point of view, but it just it just shaped my entire life. Like there's many other people from my class at AFI who are like my family now, basically. So
Yeah.
that's another I don't know, really wonderful part of film school for me as well.
I feel like it happens most like in the cinematography discipline because I mean, some of your classes are like 9 hours long, first of all, and you're just like, you're there together, but you're also like, working for each other, you're teaming with each other. That doesn't happen as much with other disciplines, with writers, with directors, right? You're kind of, on your own little island. But cinematographers, it's built into the system that you're supporting each other.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you throw people into a blender like that, and of course, like you're gonna bond. It's inevitable.
Yeah. So what was the biggest challenge in that first year of film school, of adapting to it, or a big failure you made that you learned from? Those are always good.
Hmm. Um,
Or that one cycle, like that narrative workshop where you got torn apart and you you pulled over on the way home and threw up, which is a true story from another alum.
really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I don't know that I threw up, but I definitely had like a spot in SDAC where I would like cry after watching dailies. I remember that. Um, I mean, I think that was the biggest challenge, just like confronting this like vast, vast, vast territory that you're only at the beginning of starting to traverse when you enter film school.
Mm.
Um, and recognizing how much work and time needs to put in order for like your skill to match what you have inside your head. That's why, right? So many cycle films are fucking terrible. Most of the things that I shot were pretty terrible. And it's not because it's like Bill Dill always says, it's not even like that the idea is necessarily the bad thing. Usually it's more practical stuff that is the obstacle. I might be misquoting him, but yeah, you see what I mean. It's like
I know what you mean.
gap is so hard to broach. Spiritually, it's very hard to deal with. Also because, I don't think anybody goes to film school who doesn't have like a really deeply personal relationship with cinema. And so to dare to practice it is really to like to put your soul on the line, like no matter what your craft is. And when the results come out half baked, the feeling is so painful. It's hard to describe, but I think anybody who is interested in this kind of thing or who's listening knows exactly what I'm talking about. And to pick yourself back up out of that feeling and to dare to practice another day uh is very hard, and I think that was one of my biggest challenges. I wanted to quit a lot of the time.
Really?
Oh yeah. Doesn't everybody?
Yeah, probably they don't admit it though. But you put on a good poker face, at least from my, very distant perspective.
Yeah.
You always seemed very confident and, you know, jovial, like you were enjoying it when you were probably dying inside, like most of your classmates were.
Dying a little bit. No, but I loved being on set. I always loved being on set. That's the affirming thing. Even if, maybe later you have your regrets or you realize you did something wrong, like that's what kind of it kept me alive, and maybe what you saw more of because you saw people like checking out gear at Manor House or you're about to go into that thing. Um, but yeah. Is there like a common thread that you've observed for what people are challenged by the most?
It's there a lot of people talk about, like, collaboration and how hard that can be. until you figure out like what it is or find the right people to collaborate. And that's oftentimes, and you probably witnessed it if you didn't experience it, but like, especially those, those early productions, those cycle projects, and not knowing the people yet, or not knowing your taste, or not knowing how you work together, right? Like, because there's the person you're hanging out with, and then there's the person on set, right? And sometimes it's Jekyll and Hyde. And so sometimes collaborations can go sideways. Did you ever have a rough collaboration?
Oh, of course. And I've had them
Yeah.
after AFI, and I'm sure I'll have them again. I've had wonderful collaborations,
Yeah.
but I think I just like personal relationships, creative relationships, uh, are like that sometimes. It's not
Yeah.
quite fit, or there's something that creates a lot of conflict. And that can, I don't know, it's kind of inevitable. It's not like you can't find ways to like improve your approach to conflict, but
Right.
absolutely, I had conflicts in collaboration, and I'm sure I've been the cause of them before, and navigating those is hard. I don't think I found it as hard as like this really kind of like fundamental metaphysical dread of like just failing or not being good enough at the art. Like that's the biggest hurdle.
Yeah.
But that's interesting to hear. Yeah, because I encounter that a lot even after film school. I think it's just a challenge of filmmaking.
Yeah. It's baked into it, but you're like you said, it's that it comes down to relationships. Like that's sometimes it's just hard to collaborate with people in life, right? And a lot of times it comes down to communication and how we communicate and how we filter communication, how we absorb it. Um, Another thing that people talk about, and I'm curious what your reaction to it was, and it's part of the AFI process. We talked about narrative workshop, but it's what narrative workshop is, which is like getting your work, your personal stuff critiqued,
Yeah.
and how people respond to that, because a lot of times they're not used to it in a public setting, and then also learning how to critique others. How did you how did you adapt to that? Also, the cinematographers have a guy named Bill Dill as one of their teachers who, I mean, how do you describe what he does? People, it's a badge of honor to have your work torn apart by Bill Dill, to get Bill Dilled.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I took away. Wait, sorry. What can you rephrase the question?
Well, it's okay. Your how did you respond to your first time getting your work critiqued? Were you used to it, or was it hard to adapt to that?
I mean, I was used to more self-critique, I think, than like a group critique. And I guess those were interesting. I don't have super strong memories of my own films at Narrative Workshop, to be honest with you. Or of honestly of Narrative Workshop in general. I have like a very strong sense of like the the tropes of Narrative Workshop, like when people say I really bumped against, or like piggybacking off of. I remember it.
Piggybacking. I was hoping you would say that. Yes, that was the.
I remember it more as like a weird carnival, or rather than like something where I'm like, oh, go like I'm sure that it changed how I view and how I practice critique, but uh, I'm too far away of it, and my memory of it is too faded to say exactly how. I just remember these particular kind of like quirks of the experience. But I guess for
Yeah.
Bill, what I could say is like, um, you know, agree or disagree with him. It's still illuminating, I think, to hear someone's feedback, and then, be able to connect that with who with the person who's giving the critique, and knowing what their sensibilities are, what their taste is, um and to not just have like the critique be anonymous or in a vacuum, even though your classmates are anonymously giving you feedback. When he's giving you feedback, you know the point of view it's coming from, and that is helpful. Again, agree or disagree with it, and it also, I think, primes you to get used to seeing your work on a big screen. Like he would always say, I'm not critiquing this like it's a student film, I'm critiquing this like it's a film. So it just really makes you take yourself more seriously. And I think he refuses to let you make excuses about budget or time or anything like that. So I think the standard of excellence that you're held to in that class is really fundamentally like altering, because a lot of people going into film school haven't been held to that standard before, or at least going into AFI haven't been held to that standard before.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I think, like you said, you have to consider the person and like, their perspective and their tastes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the act of going through it and the act of taking it, like just listening, like teaches you how to listen, but then also the exercise of just knowing that like of training yourself that when you make something, it goes into the world and you can't defend it anymore, right?
Yes,
Because
exactly.
that's your instinct, right? When someone goes after your work, it's like, yeah, but we lost the light and we didn't have enough money for the location. It's like, doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So, and
Yeah.
that's hard to accept.
Very hard. Yeah, very hard to accept. And I think it also teaches you to move through the world with like a little bit more um grace and forgiveness, or not forgiveness. I guess like
Empathy.
yeah, not to like judge others um work with like kid gloves, but yeah, to have a little more empathy when you're thinking about how you want to deliver criticism.
Yeah.
Yeah, just I think yeah.
I'm a lot more sensitive to like, you see a movie that clearly doesn't work, not just saying, "Oh, that sucks," or "That was a terrible movie." The act of finishing a movie, having it, goes into distribution, and it's on a screen that I went to a theater and watched is a miracle in itself. So they did something right, and they all tried to make a good movie. So give everybody a little bit of consideration there.
Yeah, exactly. Like every movie in some small way or big way is a miracle. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I mean, I always remember something that Kalila Robinson, to the first years on like the first day of school when she was a second year. And it was basically like a primer for narrative workshop. And she was like, you really, don't judge your classmates' mistakes so harshly because you're gonna start making you will make a ton of your own. And yeah, the having that empathy going through film school is so
Yeah.
important.
The difference
Yeah.
is you listened. Most of the fellows don't listen.
I don't know. I think I could stand, I need to like hear that and listen to it again sometimes. But yeah, you know what? Also that whole process teaches you like um that your gut about who your audience is probably right.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people's critiques you're not going to agree with, and that's fine. It's just, if you really still feel that there's something right about the work in your gut, then you just haven't shown it to the right audience yet, probably.
Yeah.
Find each other. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. In a way, there is no right or wrong. It's just it doesn't work for some people, does work for some people, but yeah, you learn what kind of artist you are becoming through that.
Yeah, 100%. Or like there are certain, like there's a few films that I've seen like um at Lincoln Center this year where I thought like I loved this movie and I can't imagine what the response to it would have been like if it had been made and shown in narrative workshop. Whose story
Yeah.
people would have a field day. Yeah.
Yeah. I that's so funny because I always think like they love to tout David Lynch, Terrence Malick, as like come to AFI because they went here. And I think like the present day and the current AFI, the one that you went to, they would not survive in narrative workshop. These non-linear story, these non-traditional narratives, like they wouldn't get through development. They wouldn't get greenlit.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
But when when the point of view um is so undeniable and the signature on the work is so strong, then people's minds start to change a little bit. And then it's, oh, Terrence Malick's movie, or David Lynch went here, Terrence Malick went here, because the signature is undeniable.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So kind of like your favorite phrase, piggybacking on that. Uh, what was a movie that you saw in Barry's class that kind of like cracked your brain open to what was possible?
I will admit that I really disliked Uncle Boonmi, Who Can Recall His Past Lives, when Barry first showed it to us. Because I think I was still stuck on narrative workshop brain to a degree. But I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I kept hearing people refer back to it, and people I respected, and just the more that my own sensibilities evolved, the more that like Apichatpong Weerasethakul's work kind of called back to me. And when I revisited Uncle Boonmi a couple years later, I just everything like it exploded in my brain and like kind of made sense. And I had like these memories of Barry showing it, and that was all very revelatory in this kind of like circuitous way. That and I mean Beau Travail was I think the first Claire Denis movie that I had ever seen, and I'm totally obsessed with her entire body of work now, and that is just such a just such a rapturous experience to watch that with a crowd of people who are all really excited about it. And the ending and the song, The Rhythm of the Night, like being in a room full of people who are all electrified by that,
Yeah.
very special.
Yeah. You made a good point that like, movies don't exist in like a vacuum. They're not just like, masterpieces just on their own. It's all your state of mind or where you are in your life when you experience that movie. But there's something to certain movies that there's a reason that you revisited it, right? Uncle Boonmi. And then to give it that second chance and then to really like respond to it says a lot about where you were when you first saw it, and then also the power of that movie that it kind of stuck with you for some reason.
Yes, it exerted that power even though I didn't really understand the power. But I don't think
Yeah.
I gave it a second chance. I think it was like inevitable that like this it was gonna pull me back. The movie has so much I couldn't escape its gravity.
Yeah. It came to you. It knew.
Yeah.
It knew it wasn't done with you. Okay, we're getting way too spiritual here. Okay, so this since it's called After Film School, so let's talk about like what were you doing, in that let's say that last semester at AFI, preparing yourself for post AFI life? Were you thinking about it? Were you actively thinking about it? Were you like talking to people about how do I start a career? How do I get those first jobs?
I mean, I'm sure I was. I can't remember specifically how I went about it, if it was more kind of gathering anecdotal information from recent grads who were friends. Maybe I like cold emailed some people. I don't know. I don't remember exactly.
What was the first thing that you did after AFI?
What I did after AFI. Hmm.
Because the problem with AFI is so intense, it's so structured, it takes up your whole life. And when it's over, it's just like boom, we cut the cord and you're like floating in space. And
Yeah.
so, what were you doing? Like, were you just I feel like DPs are usually pretty good because you're always like crewing at least. But what was that first cinematographer job, if you can remember?
I think I'm sure I shot like a couple of no budget shorts right after. That was a real wake up call because you go from the intensity of the world at AFI to, like you said, getting the cord cut and going from this space where like you're used to working off of like a 5 ton or a 10 ton for your thesis, and then suddenly you're lucky if you got a couple stands and a joker from Wooden Nickel. It's like to retrain yourself to work with the fewest possible resources is a little bit of a wake up call on the heels of thesis.
Yeah.
um
And thesis is run like a studio production, right? With all the paperwork and permits and all that. And a lot of times, people's first productions after AFI are full on guerrilla, indie, no rules.
yeah.
Yeah. Did you do some of those?
Sure. Oh yeah. I mean, I did them for years after. I'll continue to do them. Um, yeah.
And
But
then
I
first, what was the like what is the key to your first feature? Like who was the person you met that led to the thing, or was it, did you interview for it? How did you get your first feature as a cinematographer?
Um, Someone I met in undergrad who started directing like basically like right after I had graduated from Northwestern. She took like the senior directing class and did her first short that I really loved. And I was very impressed by. Just like her voice was so clear in it. Yeah, she reached out to me when she was like writing one of the later drafts of this film, Ma Belle, My Beauty. And yeah, I mean we met because Marion, this director, pulled focus on one of the first shorts that I ever shot. There's like an old picture of us at the camera when Marion is the 18 and I think I'm like 19 or something. At a red one, can you believe that? The ancient red one. It feels like a year ago. So that's where, that started because we both just met in college. And then she started directing and I kept up with her work. And she saw that I had gone to AFI and I was shooting a little bit more and more. And so she reached out to me about, was I interested in the film and did I want to read the script? And I really, like I said, I was really impressed by the strength of her voice in this feature that in this first short that she had made. I think to make a short at all of 21 or 22 years old that feels like it has that distinctive quality is really rare. And so I jumped at the opportunity to get to work with her, and that just I really lucked out.
And that's Ma Belle, My Beauty.
Yeah.
And that's quite a debut, right? As far as the way it was received.
Yeah. I'm super proud of the work and I think Marion's a really brilliant director. The festival run was a really wonderful, wonderful gift, even if it was like COVID festivals. Um, yeah, I couldn't have asked for like not just a better outcome, I think in more like mercenary terms with all like the festivals of it all, but in feeling like we had made something that I was proud of and I was proud to stand by and that I got to make with friends and a really wonderful crew and that also helped me cut my teeth more on handheld operating and helped me develop um just an approach that's very close to my heart when it comes to how I work when I'm doing handheld. And that movie was almost entirely handheld. So that when I think about my approach to camera work, I can see a lot of like major things about it.
Mm-hmm. And you never did you get a chance to play with that while you were at AFI handheld?
Not in like a major way on cycle or thesis. I remember when Mitch Dubin came and did a handheld operating class. I think about that still sometimes because, like, when you asked about my height, I asked Mitch Dubin the same question, which is kind of stupid because his answer was like, well, if it's the wrong height, the grips just build me like an enormous platform. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. You work with like all the resources in the world. Um, but no, he also gave me a great answer like that. That was just more or less like, uh, and also, if I'm just on my feet, the director often likes to see characters like looked at from a lower angle. It makes them look heroic. It makes them look this or that. And I think that's probably part of what makes him and Spielberg good collaborators. The nature of Spielberg's work is that he often is making his characters feel heroic. So to have a shorter operator makes sense in that context.
Yeah. And he used to tell a lot of stories from a child's perspective. So
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that makes sense. But you're right. He has all the Spielberg resources. What does that do? Like, so you get a lot of notice for that. I mean, like I'm looking at the Variety review where you get called out, which is very cool when your name is in Variety as the cinematographer.
That's great.
Um, but what does that do? Do cinematographers get typecast? Do you get offered a whole bunch of handheld movies?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. I'd like to continue doing it as long as as long as my body will let me. I know it's, in this industry, you have to really take care of your body, and I could do a better job of not like beating it up so much. I probably need to get an ergo rig, but yeah, haven't done that yet.
You have to actively like, maintain the body. Like, do you work out and things like that? Thinking of what your career is?
Um, Not necessarily. I know that there are personal trainers who work with Steadicam operators in particular, and they have different strains on their body than, just a regular old um than somebody who's just doing handheld would have. Um, but no, I haven't really got like a regimented routine outside of work that caters specifically to those needs. I think what I do to take care of myself, at least at minimum, is when I have a handheld build, I'm very particular about the way it's balanced. I'm very particular about the way the handles are offset, and this and that. Nothing special. I think like everybody is who does a lot of handheld is pretty meticulous about how they want it all to be configured, because you're shouldering it for so long that it has to be sustainable.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, take care of your body, please, because you're gonna have a very long career. So let's keep it as long as possible. What is next for you as far as like what's coming out, and then what do you have planned next to shoot?
Well, so Dandelion has had its festival premiere. This is a feature, an IFC feature that I believe is coming out later this year. I don't know the theatrical release date, but that will be coming up soon, I think, on the heels of the festival circuit. And then I don't know, working on just personal work. I made like a little documentary about my grandmother that I've just submitted to some festivals. More importantly than that, I'm just excited, I think, to like have that work feel like it's complete, even if it's not perfect. And we'll see what
But you
happens.
did you direct that?
I mean, I directed it in the sense that like there wasn't a director and I was the one there with my
Lauren,
grandmother.
you got to own it. You directed it.
I'll own it. But it feels strange to say because it's not fine. I directed it, but it's not like hmm. It's not directing, I think, in the way that like even most documentary directors would do it. I just feel like to call myself like the director of that would be to like uh I don't know, insult the craft of career directors.
I need to see it. I need to see it. What is it? What is the story? I know you said it's about your grandmother, but what is it?
Um yeah, I mean there's no real like uh concrete narrative to it. It's more about being present with her in the spaces that she occupied, and like the particular quirks of her physicality and her routines, and um observing uh I don't know, observing a little bit of the way that she spoke. But she was a very like a taciturn kind of person. Like even when I tried to ask her questions about her life and what was it like uh being in your 20s in 1940s Havana, and what are your memories of this decade and that decade, I never really got a lot of information out of her. We had a different kind of relationship, and it wasn't because she didn't like being around me, and or that she didn't show me love. She was a very loving grandmother, but the way that I experienced her was much more um about her physical presence. So it's
Hmm.
just kind of a movie about that, and there's no interviews. It's not like that kind of documentary. It's borderline ahistorical. Um so yeah. And she reminded me of like the lady who walks really slow in Goodbye Dragon Inn, who just like walks down the hallways of this movie theater. Um, and so after I started watching more like, I'm gonna butcher his name, Simon Lang movies, I was
Okay.
like, she reminds me of like a person who just like walks really slowly through the frame in one of those movies. So that's the kind of movie I wanted to make about her.
And is that what started it? Like you noticed the way she walked and you're like, "Oh, I need to capture this."
Yeah, or just like her being in general. And I knew
Yeah.
that when I had gone home to visit my family this past Christmas, I was like, she was almost 100 years old. I figured it was just like
Wow.
I was like, I really have to like document in some way. Um, yeah, just the time I got to spend with her.
I think that's so cool. I don't know anything about your grandmother, but I want to see this. I want to see what you did.
Yeah, here I have
Yeah.
her. You will see it, and also that's her. Isn't
Oh,
that
wait,
crazy?
wait, 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 wait. Stay there for a second. Sorry, I have. Oh my God, what a great photograph.
Isn't
Was
that
she a
crazy?
dancer or is that just some formal event?
I thought it was some culture thing that I wasn't aware of, and my mom was like, "Nah, it's basically like a joke costume thing, or that would be the equivalent of dressing up like with an Indian headdress to Coachella." My mom said this was just like a joke costume thing. I don't know. And when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, she is wearing a fez. Like that's not really a Cuban garment, but
Right. Oh my God, I love it. And she's over 100. You have good genes. So, you know what?
yeah.
Abuse the body. Go for it. I take it all back.
Yeah, it's here to be used. And to be devoted to cinema. But yeah, so that's something that I'm really proud of, and that it feels special to me, and it feels like I don't know, like yet another way in which cinema has become like a really a personal practice for me, and a really like intrinsic part of my life. And it's yeah, just the way through which I feel like so many things in my life have been refracted.
Yeah. I uh I know you don't want to own that title of director, but something about you that always felt like that. And maybe this is a little dipping the toe in, and we'll see more of that from you in the future.
Maybe of like these slow small documentaries, but I also really I love serving my directors in a narrative space, and I don't see myself um trading one practice for the other. I
Yeah.
love directors.
Yeah, you don't have to. You don't have to. All right. So film school, worth it?
I mean, I don't know what my life looks like without it, and I wouldn't at this juncture trade my life for another version of it. So I think
Yeah.
the answer on that basis is yes. Um,
When young, like when you're on set and these young crew members come up to you and they ask you about your experience, do you encourage them to go to film school?
um, I'm sure that I have the direction that the industry is heading in gives me some pause maybe. Um, if you were to ask me that question like right here today versus what I may have told other people even 6 months ago, I don't know. Not a satisfactory answer, sorry.
No, no, but that's fair. That's totally fair. And it's if there was going to be a right answer to that question, I think that's it. Because I think I've been having this conversation a lot recently of like, do places like this have a future? And I'm saying this because I'm sitting in a certain place right now because they're so expensive. It's such an investment to go into an industry that feels like it's contracting and shrinking.
Yeah, and it's squeezing you in all sorts of other ways.
Yeah.
Like, even the biggest directors now put some of their own money into their films still, even their studio movies.
Yep.
It's not like they're struggling anymore, but the fact that they continue to use personal funds for that kind of thing is like a little bit mind-blowing when you think about it. And without exception, I think the auteurs that we all really revere have always put their personal resources into their films. So it's like, not only are you like, yeah, you're just kind of bleeding from every direction. um, so I don't know. I think there will always be a place for some version of an institutionalized community that that uh, ushers films out into the world, whether that's places like AFI, whether that's things like the Gotham or Sundance Labs, or even just like, you know, informally, like the scene that produced all like the mumblecore movies of the, you know, the early 2010s in New York. Like there's got to be some kind of like scene, right? And that goes from the informal to the formal. It's so that's necessary for the for films to survive, no question. But yeah, whether that exists in like a really meaningful way in an institutional form in the future, and whether that's going to even be like the most exciting place where films are made, I don't know.
On that note, I was gonna say sour. On that dark note, no, no. I honestly, I love listening to you talk. You're one of the most articulate and passionate and intelligent people that I've encountered through these halls. So, that was a great wrap up to this. And you know, we're just starting, so we'll, you know, I'd love to actually like, you know, do a deep dive into one of your films sometime. But that's for another thing. That's for HLMS. Come back.
LMS, I want my orange cone.
I can't believe you haven't gotten one yet. We'll get you an orange cone.
Oh no, I have to earn. I mean, listen, Deacons has an orange cone. Vim Vendors got his orange cone recently, or maybe he already had one. The orange cone is not anything I'm in a rush for.
You saw the Vim Vendors? The people posted the Vim Vendors, huh?
Oh, they sure did.
Yeah.
I talked to Barry about it too. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not in a rush. I can't. It would be weird if I had an orange cone right now. You got to prove your worth.
I love that beat up plastic cone means so much to people, as it should.
Oh, it should. Yeah, of course. I don't know. Do you remember from my class, Nathan Mielke, Patrick Oziel, and Scott Summers?
Yeah.
I mean, talk about relationships from AFI that have lasted. We have a group chat that I got like 27 messages from today. That's still going. And the four of us have always talked about the orange cone as like, you know, forget the Oscars, forget Independent Spirit Award, none of this stuff. Camera homage, no. The orange cone is the real marker of achievement.
I love it. We're gonna know that, and also I love this, the orange cone.
Orange cone, exactly. It kind of works as silent.
The orange cone in me sees the orange cone in you.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Lauren, be well. Don't be a stranger. Next time you come to LA, say hi to me as well as Barry. And big fan, and I love you.
Love you, dude. Thanks so much for having me. It's such a pleasure. And we have to catch up. I have a million questions about AFI. We got to catch up proper sometime.
Please. Enough AFI. Give me a break. All right. We'll do it another time. Go to sleep or whatever you do at New York at night.
It's only 9:15.
It's just getting started.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Talk to you later. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.